The recovery room smelled like antiseptic, and something faintly floral from the nurse's hand lotion, as Cecily Drummond lay still against the inclined hospital bed, both arms too tired to lift. Her abdomen ached in deep, pulling waves from the emergency C-section that had ended 40 minutes ago, and somewhere down the corridor, behind a set of doors she couldn't see through, her twin daughters were being wrapped in warming blankets by NICU nurses. 2 girls. 6 weeks early, but breathing. Her whole world reduced to that one fact, breathing. She hadn't held them yet. When the door to room 412 opened, Cecily assumed it was Nurse returning with her vitals update. She didn't turn her head. The footsteps were wrong, though. Firm, measured, the particular cadence of a man who owned every floor he walked across. The scent that followed confirmed it. Cedar and vetiver, $1,200 a bottle. Fletcher's cologne. Fletcher Corwin stepped to the side of the bed without touching her. He was dressed in the charcoal suit he had worn to a development meeting that morning, tie still knotted with the precision of someone who had not been anywhere near a delivery room. His jaw was set. His eyes moved over her once, not with concern, with assessment. Fletcher. Her voice came out thinner than she intended. They won't let me into the NICU yet, but they said the girls are stable. Did you see them through the window? Did anyone take you? He set a manila envelope on the tray table beside her untouched cup of ice chips. The flat sound of it cut her off the way a judge's gavel does. Final, procedural, indifferent. I need you to look at this, he said. She stared at the envelope. Her name was typed on the front in a font she recognized, his attorney's letterhead. Even before she opened it, some part of her already knew. Fletcher, I just had surgery. I know when you had surgery. He clasped his hands in front of him. The timing actually makes this cleaner. No argument about assets accumulated during an active marriage, when both parties are, functional. The word functional landed somewhere near her sternum. She opened the envelope, 3 pages. The words petition for dissolution of marriage were formatted neatly at the top, her full legal name, his. The date of their marriage. 6 years and 4 months ago, a Saturday in October on the rooftop of the building her father had built. The grounds, irreconcilable differences. You planned this, she said, not a question. I filed 3 weeks ago. He shrugged one shoulder. I was waiting for the right moment. The pregnancy complicated things. Cecily's hands did not shake. She had not expected that. She watched her own fingers hold the papers and felt something cold and clarifying move through her, like water finding cracks in stone. The girls aren't even an hour old. Which is why I'm being direct. You'll want to secure counsel before you recover enough to be emotional about it. He tapped the envelope. There's a number on the back. Someone I'd recommend. She's reasonable. This doesn't have to be hostile. The door behind him opened. A woman stepped in, early 30s, night shift scrubs, the particular quiet authority of someone who has seen too much to be easily shaken. Her name badge read T. Morrison, RN. She looked at Fletcher, then at Cecily, then at the papers in Cecily's hands. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. Mr. Corwin, she said, your wife is in the first hour of surgical recovery. I'm going to need you to step into the waiting area while we check her incision. Fletcher's jaw tightened. This will only take. It isn't a request. The nurse moved to the other side of the bed, positioning herself between him and Cecily with the practiced ease of someone who had done this before in different rooms, with different men. You can speak with her when she's been cleared by the attending. He looked at Cecily one last time. The look said, sign it. Then he buttoned his jacket and walked out, and the door closed behind him with a soft, decisive click. Nurse Morrison said nothing for a moment. She checked the IV line, adjusted the pillow behind Cecily's right shoulder. Then quietly, you don't have to decide anything tonight. Cecily folded the papers and set them face down on the tray. He thinks I have nothing without him. The nurse didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was measured. Men who say that are usually wrong about at least one thing. Down the hall, behind the NICU glass, 2 little girls, unnamed yet, wrapped in hospital flannel, breathed in shallow, determined rhythms that the monitors marked in soft green lines. The next 40 minutes passed in a strange suspension. A resident checked Cecily's vitals, adjusted her medication drip, and told her the NICU team would update her soon. Fletcher did not return, but she could hear him in the hallway, his voice low and clipped, the tone he used on contractors who had missed a deadline. Once, she thought she heard him laugh. The sound pressed against her chest like a thumb. A different knock came at the door, lighter, deliberate. The woman who entered was perhaps 60, in a wool blazer the color of slate, carrying a briefcase with a monogram Cecily had seen as a child. 2 brass letters, worn smooth, G.A. Genevieve Alcott, her father's attorney, her parents' attorney technically, for 23 years before both of them were gone. Cecily's breath caught. Genevieve. "Hello, sweetheart." Genevieve crossed the room unhurriedly, set her briefcase on the chair, and pressed one cool hand against Cecily's forehead. Not a medical gesture, a maternal one. "I heard about the girls. Congratulations. How are they?" "Stable NICU, 6 weeks early." Cecily's voice cracked on the last word. "I haven't held them yet." "You will." Genevieve's eyes dropped to the folded papers on the tray. Her expression did not shift, but her hand stilled for a moment. He didn't wait long. "He filed 3 weeks ago." Cecily laughed, and it hurt. "He said the pregnancy complicated things." Genevieve picked up the petition, scanned the first page, set it back down. "He also seems to believe that the Drummond estate and your father's holdings are marital property subject to division." Cecily blinked. "He said I'd walk away with the apartment on Dearborn. The car. A settlement. He's operating on incomplete information." Genevieve opened her briefcase and removed a document, thick, bound, with an embossed seal on the cover that Cecily recognized immediately. The Drummond Family Trust. "Your father anticipated this possibility. Not Fletcher specifically, but the possibility of someone like Fletcher." Cecily stared at the seal. Her father had pressed it himself years ago, onto a dozen different documents she had never thought much about. He had been meticulous, quiet about it, private. "He placed everything into a protected trust," Genevieve said. "The Drummond Building on Michigan Avenue, the architectural licensing rights, all 14 of them, the land parcels in Lake County, the controlling interest in the Drummond Land Group." She looked up. "None of it is marital property. None of it was ever reachable by your husband. He cannot touch it in a divorce proceeding. He never could." The room was very quiet. "He doesn't know," Cecily said. "No." Genevieve's voice was precise. "He married you believing your father's estate would flow through to him eventually. He was wrong. And tonight he's about to find out how wrong." Before Cecily could respond, her phone buzzed on the bedside table. An unknown number. She almost let it ring. Then she answered. The voice was unfamiliar, female, young, shaking. "Mrs. Corwin?" "Who is this?" A pause, then, "My name is Tara Bloom. I work for your husband. Worked. I need you to know that I'm at the hospital. I came because Fletcher told me to stay away, but I couldn't. I couldn't just." The voice dissolved into something that sounded like a sob swallowed mid-breath. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Cecily felt the walls of the room rearrange around her. She kept her voice even. "Where are you right now?" "Lobby. First floor. Security already talked to me once." A pause. "I tried to go upstairs, to the NICU floor. I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking. I just needed to talk to him and he wasn't answering, and I—" "Did you go near the babies?" "No." "Security stopped me in the elevator." Tara's voice dropped. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come. But there's something you need to know. About Fletcher, about what he's been doing with the Drummond Building." Genevieve had been listening. She set down her pen. Cecily said, "Stay where you are. Don't leave." She ended the call, looked at Genevieve. "She knows about the building." Genevieve's expression sharpened into something practiced and careful. "Then she may know more than Fletcher does." The NICU nurse who stepped into the room 20 minutes later was apologetic before she even opened her mouth, which told Cecily everything. "Mrs. Corwin, I'm sorry to tell you this during an already difficult evening. Baby girl B had a brief episode of oxygen desaturation about 15 minutes ago. We've stabilized her. She's responding well. But I want to be transparent with you." The cold that moved through Cecily was different from what Fletcher's papers had caused. That had been like ice. This was like the floor dropping out entirely. Is she in pain? The same question any mother asks first. No. She's on supplemental oxygen. Her color is good. She settled quickly once we repositioned her. The nurse paused. We'd like you to come in for skin-to-skin contact as soon as the attending clears you. Your presence helps regulate their vitals. Cecily was already trying to swing her legs over the edge of the bed. The wheelchair ride to the NICU was the longest of her life. The hallway felt like something she was moving through rather than across. The overhead lights, the sound of monitoring equipment behind closed doors, the faint squeak of the nurse's shoes against linoleum. She pressed both hands flat against her thighs to keep from gripping the armrests. The NICU doors opened with a soft pneumatic exhale. The warmth inside was immediate and deliberate. Everything in this room was calibrated for survival. A nurse guided her to the first incubator, baby girl A. She was small, startlingly small, but her chest was rising and falling in a rhythm that felt, to Cecily, like the most reliable thing she had ever witnessed. The second incubator held baby girl B. A thin cannula of supplemental oxygen rested beneath her nose. Her eyes were closed. Her fingers, curled against her cheek, were perfect. The nurse helped Cecily position herself in the recliner. Carefully, deliberately, she placed baby girl A against Cecily's chest, skin to skin, the way the human body is designed to work. The baby exhaled once, a small and complete sound, and went still in that particular way newborns go still when they have found the safest place in the world. Cecily didn't speak for a long time. She just breathed, in and out, letting her body tell her daughter's bodies, I am here. I am not going anywhere. When the NICU door opened and Fletcher walked in, the moment shattered. He had gotten past the front desk by invoking his name, the name still on the admission forms, the name the system recognized as family. He stood at the edge of the room with his hands in his jacket pockets, and he looked at the incubators with an expression Cecily could not read. Not softness, not remorse. Something more like calculation interrupted. They told me baby B had an episode, he said. She's stable. Cecily did not look at him. Good. He moved a step closer. Cecily, we need to resolve the paperwork before I leave tonight. My attorney has a hard deadline. Your attorney. Genevieve's voice came from the doorway. She stepped inside, heels quiet on the floor, and positioned herself with the unhurried confidence of someone who has been in far worse rooms than this. Yes, we should talk about that. Fletcher turned, recognized her. Something shifted in his face, not quite fear, but its precursor. Genevieve, what are you doing here? I was invited. She opened the Drummond Trust document. I thought you might want to review some paperwork of your own. His eyes dropped to the seal. That's the Drummond Family Trust. I've seen that seal before. Her father was always. He stopped. That's not relevant to a dissolution proceeding. It's extraordinarily relevant, Genevieve said, because every asset you've listed as divisible marital property in your petition. The Drummond building, the land parcels, the licensing rights, the controlling share of the Drummond Land Group, every single one of them is held in an irrevocable trust with Cecily as the sole beneficiary. They were never marital property. They never entered the marital estate. They cannot be touched. The room was so quiet Cecily could hear her daughter breathing against her chest. Fletcher's composure fractured in stages. First the jaw, then the hands which came out of his pockets and found nothing to hold. That's impossible. The building is in? Her name, her father's name, the trust's name. Genevieve turned a page, never yours. He stared at the document, kept reading. The color of his face changed in a way Cecily had never seen before. Not anger, not embarrassment, but the particular ash quality of someone watching a very large door close. You married Cecily believing her father's estate would eventually become accessible through the marriage, Genevieve said. Her voice was not unkind. It was precise. Her father anticipated exactly that scenario. He built protections that have been in place since before you met her. I didn't, Fletcher started. You didn't read the prenuptial agreement carefully enough. That part, at least, I can believe. Genevieve set the document on the counter beside the incubator and folded her hands. The question now is what you'd like to do with this information. Fletcher looked at Cecily. For a moment, just a moment, something moved across Hattie's face that might have been shame. Then it was gone. This changes the terms, he said flatly. It ends the terms, Genevieve replied. The door opened again. A man in a dark coat stepped inside, Stuart Morrow, the estate manager Cecily's father had appointed and whom she had spoken to only twice since her father's death, both times about property tax filings she hadn't understood. He was calm in the way of someone who had driven 2 hours for exactly this moment. Stuart, Cecily exhaled his name. I got here as fast as I could. He looked at Fletcher without expression. Mr. Corwin, I imagine this has been an educational evening. Fletcher turned on him. Who called you? Genevieve did when the divorce filing was flagged 2 weeks ago. Stuart removed a folder from inside his coat. There are also some matters related to the Drummond Building's development lease that need to be addressed. Specifically, the sublease amendment you signed 3 months ago without Cecily's knowledge or consent. The room tightened. Cecily looked at her husband. What sublease amendment? His silence was its own answer. Stuart continued, voice even. Mr. Corwin used his signatory access as Cecily's spouse on a secondary business account to push through a development amendment on the Michigan Avenue property. The amendment would have given his firm preferential rights to the air development above the Drummond Building in exchange for a management fee structure that benefited Corwin Development exclusively. He paused. The trust committee caught it 6 weeks ago. We've been building documentation since then. Fletcher stepped backward. That was a business arrangement, a legitimate. It was fraud, Genevieve said quietly, against a protected trust, which is a federal matter. As if the word had been a signal, heavier footsteps came down the corridor outside. Purposeful in a different way from hospital footsteps. Through the glass wall of the NICU, Cecily could see 2 men in dark coats stop at the nursing station and show credentials to the charge nurse. The charge nurse looked toward the NICU doors. Fletcher saw it too. Cecily. His voice changed entirely. The calculation was gone. What replaced it was something she had not heard from him in years. It was close to panic. Cecily, listen to me. Whatever they told you, I can explain the lease amendment. I was trying to build something for us. For the family, I thought. You thought I had nothing, she said. The same words she had said to the nurse hours ago, but they landed differently now. Cleaner. You thought I was an asset to liquidate. That's not. You filed while I was in my 3rd trimester. You waited until I was in surgical recovery to deliver the papers. You brought your attorney's timeline into a NICU. She looked at the baby on her chest, at the slow, perfect rhythm of that small rib cage. And you still don't understand why any of that is wrong. He opened his mouth. The NICU doors opened. The 2 men in dark coats entered. One of them addressed the room politely but without softness. Mr. Corwin, we're with the Federal Compliance Division. We've been trying to reach you through your office for the past 72 hours regarding the Drummond Building lease amendment and a series of related transfers. He glanced briefly at Genevieve. Mrs. Alcott, thank you for your cooperation. Fletcher turned to Cecily one final time. Please, just the one word. She held her daughter and said nothing. There was nothing left to say to him that the room hadn't already said. The officers were patient and professional. They allowed Fletcher to step outside the NICU before speaking with him further, and Cecily did not watch him go. She kept her eyes on her daughters, on the rise and fall of baby girl A's chest, on the steady green lines of baby girl B's monitor, which had not alarmed again. Stuart came to stand nearby. You're going to be all right, he said quietly. I know, she meant it. Genevieve placed a hand briefly on her shoulder. Your father would be furious at tonight, and very proud of you. Cecily's throat tightened. He always said I was too patient with people who didn't deserve it. He was usually right. It was nearly midnight when the NICU nurse helped Cecily settle both girls against her, one in each arm, impossibly small and possibly warm, breathing in the syncopated rhythm of twins who have shared a body and are still learning to be separate. The monitors hummed softly. Outside the hospital windows, Chicago spread out in cold winter light. She named them then, because it felt like something that belonged to her alone, in this room, in this hour. The one who had come first, who had cried before anyone expected her to. Rowan. For the tree her mother had planted in the backyard of the Drummond house the year Cecily was born. because her mother had believed in planting things that outlasted you. The one who had frightened her, the oxygen episode, the monitors, the flat ashen terror of that first update, she named Iris. Because her father had grown them in a window box in his office for 30 years, and because the word meant both a flower and the part of the eye that lets in light. And she thought both meanings were exactly right for a child who had already shown she knew how to fight her way back to breathing. 3 weeks later, Cecily carried Rowan and Iris through the front door of the Drummond house on the north side of Chicago for the first time. The house smelled of wood polish and old books, and the faint ghost of her father's pipe tobacco, which had soaked into the plaster walls decades ago and never entirely left. She stood in the entryway for a long moment, one baby in each arm, and let herself feel the weight of it, the house around her, the address that had always been hers, the fact of it. On the hall table, where the estate staff had left it, was an envelope, cream-colored, sealed in wax with the Drummond signet ring. Stuart had found it in her father's safety deposit box, with a single instruction written on the outside in her father's hand. To be delivered to my daughter when she returns to this house as a mother. She had to set both babies in their carriers before she could open it. Her hands shook on the wax seal. Her father's handwriting was exactly as she remembered, small, slanted slightly to the right, ink that had dried a dark permanent blue. Cecily, if you are reading this, you've done it. You've made it through whatever it was that life found for you, and you've come home. I always knew you would. I won't pretend I knew it would look like this. I hoped for better for you, in the specific way that fathers hope for their daughters, quietly, and too late sometimes, and with more information than we ever know how to share. The trust was never about money. It was about making sure that nothing built by this family could be taken from you by someone who didn't understand what this family cost. Your grandfather built the Drummond building with 40 workers, and a loan he paid back in 7 years. Your grandmother managed the land parcels through 2 recessions and never sold an acre. I inherited their discipline and tried to pass it to you in the only way I knew how, by protecting what I built long enough for you to grow into it. You are already stronger than you think. You always have been. Raise your children to know where they come from. That's the only inheritance that matters. The rest is just architecture. All my love, Dad. She sat on the floor of the Drummond house hallway, back against the wall, daughters sleeping in their carriers beside her, and she let herself cry. Not the held-back, controlled crying of the hospital. Real crying, the kind that comes when you have been carrying something enormous for a very long time, and you finally set it down. It took a few minutes. Then she wiped her face, folded the letter, and put it in her jacket pocket against her heart. Fletcher Corwin entered a deferred prosecution agreement 4 months later, surrendering his interest in Corwin Development's Michigan Avenue project and paying restitution to the Drummond Trust. His petition for a divorce settlement share of Cecily's holdings was dismissed at the first hearing. His attorney did not argue the point a second time. Tara Bloom had given a full accounting to the federal investigators the night of Cecily's hospitalization. Texts, transfer records, conversations in which Fletcher had told her the Drummond estate was, in his words, just waiting to be properly managed. She was not charged. She moved away from Chicago in the spring. Cecily did not wish her harm and did not think about her often. On a Sunday in March, when Rowan and Iris were 4 months old, and sleeping through the night with the quiet reliability of children who feel safe, Cecily stood at the window of her father's study on the 3rd floor of the Drummond house and looked out at the city. Lake Michigan was gray and flat in the winter light. The bare branches of the backyard rowan tree made a pattern against the sky that she had been looking at her whole life, without ever stopping to name it. Stuart had left a briefing packet on the desk, the first year's schedule for the Drummond Land Group, which she would begin chairing in April. 14 properties, 6 active development partnerships, the architectural licensing portfolio her father had built from the patents of his own firm. She picked up the briefing packet. Then she set it down, turned away from the desk, and went to get her daughters out of their cribs, before they woke up on their own. Some things, she had decided, did not wait for paperwork. She had learned that in a hospital room on a January night, holding a piece of paper she had not signed, listening to the sound of her children, breathing somewhere down a corridor, and understanding, for the first time, the difference between having nothing and having everything the right person couldn't touch. She was done being someone else's calculation. She was Cecily Drummond. And the house and the land and the legacy, all of it, every acre, every brick, had always been hers.